to Midtown High Dropouts, my special Spider-Man themed podcast. And with me today are 4 special guests. Want to introduce yourself, everyone?
I'm Kyle.
I'm Anthony.
I'm Paul.
And I'm Mike.
All right. So this is
really good to have you on today. I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh yeah, no, it's
yours for a while. I've been very excited to have you on the show. I'm just really excited that you even would consider the possibility of showing up. It means a lot to me.
No problem, man.
We were just going through our DMs on Twitter, and we were like, "Hey, let's join this podcast."
Yeah, so it's just I'm so humbled by it, and I really appreciate all of you guys being here.
I'm surprised.
No problem. We're really happy to be here.
all right. So, if you haven't figured it out, we have a really big guest, real big surprise. GodzillaMendoza is on our show, and for our list. So for our listeners who don't know, Xavier, what do you do on your channel?
I don't know. I make videos about
stuff and things. Yeah, I do that sometimes.
Stuff and things. Yeah.
Stuff.
Okay, no. I do videos about just whatever comic book stuff sort of stands out to me. I do a lot of game reviews. I do cosplay tutorials. I have been doing editorials on kind of comic book movie stuff. I have a few other kind of newer types of content coming out soon, more related to my comic writing, which I've been doing a lot of. Yeah, I have about 37,000 subscribers currently, and growing more every day. And I've kind of made a moderately good name for myself in the industry. So just with YouTube stuff and keep building my audience.
All right, that's awesome. So I guess we should get started with this interview, I suppose. Anthony, you want to start?
Hold on, my brain's like going brain dead. It's just static up there.
Are you a little starstruck, Anthony?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I wanted to start off the interview with a question that I'm not sure if you've talked about before, and that would be, what are your thoughts on the Venom film?
Oh, well, I've been kind of going back and forth on that ever since it was announced, because I think Tom Hardy is really great casting for Venom, a lot better than Topher Grace. But there's parts of it that have me worried, because I kind of wonder, can you do a Venom film without acknowledging the existence of Spider-Man? And from day one, as soon as they announced it, I said, all right, you have to do the Lethal Protector storyline, where he gets kidnapped, and then they try and create more symbiotes based on his, and then he has to fight 5 new ones, and then you have Carnage in the sequel or something. Well, I know that's out of order, but I feel like in terms of a movie that would work. And I think that's actually kind of what they're doing, so I'm a little excited for that.
Yeah, I think they might do nods towards Spider-Man, but they won't say his name.
Isn't Carnage the villain?
That's up in the air right now, because they mentioned Carnage. Have they confirmed Carnage to be in the film?
They said that will be in it, but they haven't announced who's cast as who yet. And I don't know. I mean, Sony, they have a million sequels planned for a movie they're not even sure is going to do well yet. So
yeah.
Right, and they have
forward to that Ghostbusters Men in Black crossover that they were
Oh, you mean
that's still happening?
No, the Jump Street Men in Black crossover, right? It was going to be
both. They actually talked about both. That's what's upsetting about it.
It sounds so fake, but oh man, that's so many
Craven spin-off film.
Aunt May Super Spy,
Black Cat and Silver Sable.
It's Silver and Black.
I'm morbidly
yeah.
I'm very curious on what they do, because I'm looking forward to who they cast. It has a director attached, I believe. It's another female director, I believe, right? It was another first they had.
Didn't it
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it got delayed or something like that.
No, I think it was always going to be a 2019 film. If anything, it might get delayed or straight up canceled if Venom doesn't do well.
Hopefully the latter.
Well, I mean, if
I want it
anything,
to fail because Venom is like one of my all-time favorite characters. Like before I got like really into like Spider-Man or Deadpool, I loved Venom. I have like dozens of action figures and posters. I read all of the old 90s runs. But I don't know. It's Sony, you know. It's hard to
trust them.
Hard to trust them, even with like Spider-Verse,
And
which
that
looks great.
It looks visually
That
amazing.
little voice in your head going, "They're gonna screw it up. They're gonna screw it up."
Well, yeah.
You just
Well,
don't
I
wanna
mean,
believe
I have the most faith in it considering the talent they have on. They have Lord and Miller, who's done Jump Street and the Lego Movie, but they have like what's confusing is they have like 3 different directors. One of them did the animated film called Rise of the Guardians. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
alright.
that was a pretty
Was
solid
that the
film.
one with the owls?
That was Guardians.
no,
of
that was-
Rise of the Guardians was where they got all the like Jack Frost and Santa.
It was like, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one.
The only reason I remember which is because Zack Snyder directed Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you know what? I think 2018 is going to be a better year for Miles considering Bendis is leaving and he's getting his own movie.
Oh, but he dropped the bomb on us before he left. Remember?
Oh yeah. What are your
That's
what are
that's a
your
whole
what are your thoughts on that? You had a whole deal. You had a whole like essay on Twitter about it. I remember.
He did.
I like to do comic rants on Twitter sometimes that I can't really I don't have time to put videos together for. But Bendis doesn't really care about continuity. He never really has, and a lot of people kind of overlook that flaw in his writing because it's so consistent. Like even in some of his better stuff, like all of the old Ultimate Spider-Man run, which is like some of the first comics I ever read, and I had a lot of nostalgia for. Going back and reading it today, there is a lot of spots where it just kind of contradicts itself or brings up an idea and then never follows through with it.
Mm-hmm.
Or something that happened. Like Eddie Brock was introduced twice as 2 separate characters, and then they just ignored the first one.
Yeah.
I feel like I only remember the latter version.
He was just a voice in the distance.
Oh, really?
Showed him like leaning into a panel, like waving his hand at like some kind of press conference, and he said Eddie Brock working for the Daily Globe. And then I guess Bendis was like, nah, I'll do something completely different. And just kind of like within like 10 issues decided just to scrap that whole thing. Just, and that's one of many examples. That's just the one that stuck out most to me. So when he does something kind of drastic like this as his last big move before leaving Marvel, surprised or shocked me. I'm just kind of more disappointed because I'd hoped that he'd have more restraint than that. Because now it's just a whole bunch of mess for other writers to end up having to figure out how to clean up or tie off the loose end of.
Well, I don't think they will really address it ever because this is really there was no lead up to this. No one expected this to happen, so I don't know if they're really going to do anything with this. And it's kind of weird anyway since it raises a lot of questions. Like you said, like what the hell is Riri doing there? Does that mean is that where Miles would have originated from? Which
a lot of people have the speculation that maybe like some of the failing characters whose books are getting canceled are going to get kind of shoved into like the Ultimate Universe, so that the mainline Marvel could go back to kind of what people have been asking for.
Literally anything else.
Literally anything else.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how I'd feel about that. I mean, the whole point of the Ultimate Universe was to explore and try new things, and I guess if these characters aren't working for mainline, you could kind of push them off over there and see how that goes.
Well, they kind of dropped the ball the first time after Spider-Man.
Yeah, the Ultimate Universe I actually tried to read up on pretty extensively. I read through Ultimate Avengers books and Ultimate Fantastic Four. There are some really cool ideas, but there's also, for every one of those, there's 2 bad ideas, and it just kind of...
Oh, like an ultimatum.
After a while. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ultimatum is...
Or incest, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch.
I was just talking about
Or
it today.
the wasp getting eaten by
Yep,
the
the
blob.
cannibalism.
And
It tasted like chicken, remember?
That was so weird and out of place considering that like Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Spider-Man both had Blob in them and treated him like a completely different character. Like he's Liz Allen's dad.
What?
Be like a nice
What the
guy.
fuck?
Yeah, remember?
Somebody's react. Who said that?
I haven't read much Ultimate for this
I
reason.
don't know. I don't
It's-
even-
I spent a day in ISS
panel-
Spider-Man, so like, yeah.
I don't
In
even.
I
the
should know
Ultimate
this.
Universe, Liz Allen becomes Firestar.
Right.
They, they do like a send-up of Spider-Man and his amazing friends. And then,
Magneto's like, hey, come on, join us and
Yeah.
stuff. We're good.
That is honestly
really emotional little
hilarious.
prologue where it shows at the very end Blob talking to Magneto and going, "Man, I'm really proud that I have a daughter. I mean, I just wish I could talk to her more." And then like 3 storylines later, he's eating someone's intestines.
That raises a lot of questions.
Where did he go?
Well, there. I think that.
Care.
I think that
Panel,
just
the art
that
for him eating fucking it looked creepy. It looked very
that
creepy.
leads that
Oh, yeah.
and
I
that
felt uncomfortable.
and that really ties into what you said earlier. There's just not a great sense of continuity in the Ultimate Universe in general, even outside of Bendis.
Cohesion. Nothing ever kind of sticks. It's just a bunch of ideas thrown at the wall, and maybe
And they're all
I
bad
don't know,
ideas. They're all terrible ideas.
time they stick. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of bad ones, and or you know, another example I remember is during Ultimatum. It actually shows you visual confirmation that Spider-Man died in the main 5 or 6 issues of Ultimatum,
Right.
and then in a Spider-Man solo book contradicts it right away because Bendis doesn't read anything by the other writers. Like it shows him in Valhalla hanging out at like a dinner table with all of the heroes who died in that storyline.
Yeah, I remember that.
Cuts to, like in the next issue, they're just pulling up some rubble and he was just unconscious.
And he didn't. They in the Ultimate Solo. They just like found his mask, right? They didn't find the body.
Yeah, and they just gave it.
They found his body. They think it was some kind of prologue issue for Ultimate Spider-Man that was supposed to have like J. Jonah Jameson. He was like typing an article about how he felt ashamed for trash talking Spider-Man for so many years. Sees him like diving into the water, pulling people out during the tsunami, and he's like, "Wow, I was really wrong about the guy, and I'm sad that he's dead." And at the very last panel of the issue, the rest of the Avengers that are alive, like Captain America, are pulling up a bunch of rubble and see him under a pile of rocks, and he's like,
Yeah, I remember that.
That was a record.
I think he was jealous of him because he couldn't do what he could, right? Like JJ.
That sounds like
"Yeah." There's every writer has his own kind of explanation. I remember there was a book by Gary Conway in the 70s that I really liked, where Spider-Man and J. Jonah Jameson are like, and the handcuff is a bomb, and they have to figure out how to get it off. I might be remembering that wrong, but
That's some Saw
yeah.
well, they
that should have been in Jigsaw.
they even addressed that kind of stuff like early on. I'm pretty sure ASM 10 also had like the final page be about why JJ hates Spider-Man.
Yeah. So in that storyline that Gary Conway wrote, I think Spidey ends up, getting them out of the situation and beating the bad guy, who's obscure, lame guy who has like hypnosis powers or something. And then he swings off into the distance, and then Jonah just kind of looks out the window and has a monologue to himself about why he hates him. He says it's because like he's just jealous because he's been trying to crusade for good for years and started this whole newspaper based on like honesty. And then some guy who's dishonest, wearing a mask, saving the city and stopping crime, and is getting about the same amount of attention in like a couple of months. So it feels like decades of work was like for nothing.
Yeah, this little shit
I like that
leotard
one.
comes around.
Yeah. Or there's in the Ultimate Universe, they have it so his son, I think it was
John.
Jameson. Yeah, they have it so he dies in like a shuttle crash like 5 or 6 years before Spider-Man even shows up. And Jonah has his own definition of the word hero, and as soon as he hears someone label that with for Spider-Man, he kind of he loses his shit over it. So every writer kind of comes up with a new reason for Jonah's hatred of Spider-Man, and I kind of consider all of them canon in one way or another, you know?
Yeah.
He's an old guy. He has a lot of experience, so I don't doubt that he has multiple reasons for disliking Spider-Man.
I guess I should.
That's how real relationships are. You don't feel a way about someone over one event or one kind of general opinion. People are more complicated than that. You can have multiple reasons for disliking someone. That's very nuanced and complicated, and so that's one of the reasons I really like. I really like this new Spectacular Spider-Man run that Chip Zdarsky is doing, where I may spoil it a little. Spidey finally, of his own accord, reveals himself to Jonah, and they have to kind of work together now.
And I guess
was that one?
That was the last few issues. Actually, I'm curious to say, this is kind of the two question. What did you that run kind of started off kind of rough? What kept you in going, or even if you thought it started out pretty bad?
Well, I thought it started out okay with the first issue. I liked it. There was just the writing on the dialogue was really good because I've been following Chip Zdarsky both as a writer and as an artist for a little while. Star-Lord series, Grounded, which was really good. Yeah. Probably made the Shocker one of my new favorite characters in Marvel. How, right?
The Shocker.
Too, right?
He's also a really good artist. There's that book for Image called Sex Criminals with Matt Fraction.
Right.
That's really funny. The premise is about a couple who can stop time whenever they have sex, so they use it to rob banks.
I've heard good things about it. Yeah.
Oh my!
It's pretty bizarre and funny.
Yeah.
The art in it is really good. So as soon as I heard that he was going to be writing a Spectacular Spider-Man series, I was like, well, what I really do is kind of start potential writers for Amazing Spider-Man off in the side series, the tertiary stuff, and then bring them in after seeing how their performance goes. Like it happened with J.M. DeMatteis, Peter David, a couple others.
Is that how you say?
As I was reading through them.
Wait.
Is
that how you say J.M. DeMatteis?
I looked it up. I looked up a video on YouTube. How do you pronounce this name? Someone said DeMatteis.
That's the third different way I've heard someone say his name.
To make sure I didn't sound like an idiot if I said it in a video, so I looked up 3 of those different pronunciation videos, and they all said it that way. So I hope those are right.
I mean, I wouldn't know how to say it either. So,
I guess.
Yeah, he wrote Kraven's Last Hunt. He's a really great writer. He accidentally contributed a lot to the Clone Saga, but everything else has been really solid.
Oof.
And I guess that leads to my follow-up question, which is, what are your thoughts on the current state of Marvel Comics? Because
times are a-changing.
is that first hesitant?
I guess what a better question would be is what are one of the better books out of the current lineup?
As I was kind of leading up to, I think Spectacular Spider-Man has gotten a lot better now that it's stopped focusing so much on witty dialogue and more so about actual kind of plot progression and characters. Because there's this really great issue where Spider-Man is trapped in an apartment having to fight his way out, and it felt like something right out of the 80s, the kind of the golden years of Spider-Man for me, where he's put up against something really hard to fight. He's not constantly joking the entire way through. It just felt like something that Dan Slott hadn't written before. So I feel like
Dan Slott.
Yeah, we have some very
the potential for Spider-Man stories to start picking up again if they start following Zdarsky's model of kind of writing it how he remembers it from decades ago. So I think Spidey is going to be on the upswing soon. And then there's also the fact that Slott is leaving and the new management might not be as enthused about the whole one more day thing. So we'll, fingers crossed that goes away.
Well,
But,
Seems that all Spider-Man's books that aren't the main book are good, at least from what I've heard.
well, have you read? You've read Miles.
Oh, we don't.
You know that reaction.
We don't.
And I guess that. What are your thoughts on the rumors that it might be Nick Spencer coming on ASM after 800?
that kind of scares me because he did arguably one of the dumbest things that Marvel did in 2016, 2017, in 2015. He just keeps writing really weird stuff with Captain America. I don't like Hydra Cap, and I really don't like how they executed that. I feel like he's gonna try and, because he's a very similar guy to Dan Slott. I think he's gonna try the same old tricks of, okay, instead of trying to just like develop the character and do, interesting situations, let's just do something really drastic and crazy that'll last like 8 months and everyone will forget in 2 months. So
True.
like I look at like Secret Empire and see it as the same sort of thing as, like Superior Spider-Man or having Spider-Man have his own company. It's just like ideas where it's like really crazy and out there and pisses off the fans, so maybe sales will jump a little bit, but now we're kind of getting wise to that and that's not working anymore. So I really hope it's not Nick Spencer. I would take anybody over Nick Spencer. Yeah, not excited about that if that's where that's going, but he'll get his shit together and take the criticism of Secret Empire seriously, and maybe he'll start to improve. I don't think anyone's completely irredeemable. It's just people to change once they've gotten into a rhythm of doing things a certain way as a writer or in general. Yeah. And I think the company in general, if we're pulling back and talking about less specifics, I think it's pretty easy to tell that things are different now. Like Dan Slott is unblocking people on Twitter. A lot of the other writers are taking a step back and not quite talking about politics as much. I actually remember in that new issue with The Thing and Human Torch, Marvel 2-in-1.
Yeah.
I remember there was actually, in the original script for that there was a Donald Trump joke, and they took it out of the final version.
How original.
Smart idea.
A Donald Trump joke.
That's interesting, because Marvel has been doing Trump jokes for like 2 years really, really consistently, and for them to take one out, indirect one where Spider-Man says that the Thing is the second most famous orange monster.
Yeah, that's
really clever.
Like a funny one, it wasn't like here's MODOK, but his face is Trump.
Yeah, I love Spider-Gwen.
Yeah. So I was like that,
Beast or Zax. Couldn't talk about anybody.
So like it was a more toned down joke, and the fact that they took it out at all is like, that's kind of step for Marvel to kind of avoid a political joke, because boy, they've been going hard on that. And then of course, like there's that all these books are getting canceled. All these low selling titles that are,
I'm surprised.
You can apply whatever labels to them you want.
I'm surprised how Squirrel Girl has dodged that bullet, because she's easily the worst selling out of all the ones that just got canceled. Yeah. And like stuff like America, I can get, or Hawkeye, Gwenpool.
I kind of like Gwenpool.
Gwenpool's so upset.
Gwenpool's a fun time.
Yeah, my friend was really upset that Gwenpool is ending, because it apparently has some really, really kind of interesting meta writing.
It's very clever. Yeah. I recommend it, especially if you like Christopher Hastings. He's written Dr. McNinja. I don't know if you know that.
I've heard of it. I've never read it.
It's good. I recommend it. It's a shame because she's painted to be like a meme, like Deadpool is, I guess.
Yeah.
And that really like hurt her, I think.
They always try to market them as like the safest, easiest thing. It's like, well, Deadpool says things that are funny. All right, he is just a meme. Just go as hard on that as you can on the T-shirts and the advertisements. Same thing to Gwenpool, which is why I think myself and a lot of people maybe tended to avoid it.
Right.
That's really a shame, actually.
And
I guess I'll go read it now. I mean, it's too late. But.
Well, that would be a great time since it's coming up on its final issue. I think I had that mindset going in, and I ended up really liking it. So, I hope you enjoy it. Yeah.
At first, I was put off by the art style, but I got used to it.
Well, Guri, the artist is great.
It's not bad art. It's just not my art style.
Right, because you hate anime, right?
I don't hate it. I just I can't get into it.
Mike, do you have anything? Mike or Paul, you guys have anything to ask?
I had a few questions, but they went away. I don't know why.
Go
Oh my god.
This happens to me. This is why I write everything down.
Oh, well.
We did that within the last 20 minutes.
Oh, I did have a question. If you guys don't know, Xavier's a pretty big horror fan. What I wanted to know is what got you into horror so much?
Oh, my dad has been into horror movies since he was like 10. Long time ago in the 70s. I think he found a copy of Fangoria magazine on a shelf one day. And he was at the store with his mom, and he pulled it off the shelf and looked at it and turned like pale white because he saw like a picture from like Hellraiser or something. It's just some really, really gory kind of movie. I don't know what it was, but he says it was like one of the most traumatizing, scary things he ever saw. And then he turned to his mom and asked if he could have that magazine. Since then, he's just been like, collecting movies and posters. He's become kind of like an encyclopedia for horror movies, and in the same way that I kind of gravitate around comics. Like, he's always been interested in comics too, but he's more of a horror guy. Kind of grew up around it. Like, some of my earliest memories are watching my dad when I was like 2, playing Resident Evil 2, or my mom playing Mortal Kombat Trilogy. And, like, I guess just gore and violence and scary stuff in video games and movies just kind of immediately lost its effect on me because it was kind of normalized by accident. So I grew up around it so much. Yeah, because, like, they weren't intending for me to, like, really, like, see it and, like, kind of absorb it at that age. But then I did, and I was like, hey, Dad, can we play more Resident Evil games? And he was like, all right.
And you're...
Ever since then, I've just kind of loved that stuff. Like, it just never really bothered me. I remember we went to the mall once when I was, like, 7, because we just moved into this house I'm at. A copy of Marvel Zombies by Robert Kirkman. And it's one of the goriest comics I've ever read. We took it home, and I was reading it when I was 7. A bunch of scenes where, like, all the Avengers who are now zombies are getting, like Captain America's shield thrown through their heads, or like steel girders pushed through their chests by Magneto, and then they pin him down and then start pulling his intestines out of him. And I was like, man, this shit's awesome.
Or Sandman diving into Spider-Man and exploding him from the inside out.
Putting that image in my head, Paul.
Such an awful
I
image.
never want to think about that.
So
You brought
the
it
Marvel
back,
Zombies series I also got into, and that was kind of, I guess, a way that really helped me transition into horror, because it kind of mixed comic books with horror. And I was like, wow, this is neat. And I mean, my favorite game ever is Dead Space, which I started playing when I was 10. It's just something I've always had in my life and always kind of grew up with, and now it's just I'm fascinated in. So I, for the past 5 years, I've been working on trying to put together a horror book. And it was originally a novel, but now we're doing it as a comic, and it's...
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I was actually...
Publishers.
That actually is a great segue, because I was about to ask, you're also writing something called Contest of Slashers, right? And I'm curious...
Yeah, that's just sort of like a fan fiction sort of thing to help me kind of get better for comic writing.
Mm-hmm.
But because it actually is about a couple of Marvel characters, I felt like I struggled with writing characters that weren't my own, because it's harder to get into the heads of them than if you created them. kind of like this little writing exercise that just kind of blew up one day because I met like, a person who could do colors and a person who could do comic art. And I was like, hey, what if we could all work together on something and I could just write like a little script since I've always kind of wanted to do it. Then they were like, wow, this is really good. You should make a video about it and we could like announce the project. And since then I've just been kind of working on that into another book that's like an original IP called I Am Become Pestilence, which I've been writing since I was in 9th grade.
That's pretty good.
A long time.
That's a good title.
Yeah, I like that.
Kind of like a working title. It was just something I came up with because I was like, what sounds kind of cool and biblical? Could come up with something better, I will. But that's what I've been just calling it for the time being. I've got like 3 better titles that I've been thinking about pitching to the team that we're working with. Because eventually one day I said, writing contests of slashers has been like a good kind of practice for me to get, used to comic writing because it's a very, very strange type of scripting. If there's anyone interested in like doing art with me or, coloring it, just let me know. And immediately like dozens of people all asked, and eventually a couple of really, really talented people stuck out. My current art team is Matt Brett. He's a really great guy. He's in college for game design right now, and he does a lot of really amazing digital art. There's also Dane Emiot, who's in Canada. He's been trying to get into the comic industry for years and has actually been sending samples to companies, and they just never really go for it because he's never really had like a writer to team up with. So it's really cool to work with him, and who you've probably met on Twitter at some point. Well, one of you guys' name's New Blue Art is doing the coloring for it. And then, of course, my buddy Damien is doing the word bubbles and lettering, and I'm writing it. And it's going really well. We're about ready to start sending off our like pitch to different publishers and see who gives us the best offer.
Oh, that's pretty exciting.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys want to know some insight?
What?
What?
It was originally supposed to be an Avengers book.
Is that true? Okay.
What? Flashers?
Didn't you tell me? Oh, I think.
Oh, did you fuck up?
Oh, I think I fucked up. Oh no! Wait,
Mike.
Fake
is that
fan.
what he told me? Is that what he told me? I think that's what he told me. I don't know.
Because I think I said that at one, but yeah, because when my friend Brandon was telling me that I should write some kind of Marvel kind of fanfic thing for him to draw, something Avengers based at first, but then I was like, well, I kind of like more of like the darker Marvel characters more, like the more street level ones. So I kind of asked for more Marvel Knights characters. So like, I got like Moon Knight and Daredevil and Punisher, and have just been kind of writing a little few long story with them. So yeah, no, he's correct on that. I right now. One of them is a sci-fi horror thing, kind of akin to like Dead Space mixed with Clockwork Orange, if you can picture that. And then the other is just this fun little thing that I'm going to post online that I'm not making any money from.
And all right, I guess you kind of answered this, but what is your writing process like? If that's too broad of a question.
For comics, I really studied this book called the DC Comics Guide to Writing Comics, which is a very title, but it's written by Dennis O'Neil, and he's one of the greats of the industry that you don't really hear from a lot. And the writing style is basically just breaking it down panel by panel and explaining like panel is supposed to look and what's being said in each one. So it's kind of like panel 1, this character, like establishing shot of the city. Panel 2, paragraph to explain, the sort of thing that Spider-Man is doing. And then you can kind of put it in like it's a script, and then what he's thinking or saying out loud, either one. And just kind of if you have more trust in your artist, you can just say the general idea of what's going to happen in the page. But the rule is like a comic script should equal about one page of the comic.
What do you?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but what would you say the hardest part of that style is for you?
Well, it's for me. It's just trying to make sure I can get the idea out of my head onto the page in a way that makes enough sense for someone to draw it. I think that's just kind of the struggle for everyone. Is how do I make this translate? My main artist, Dane Amiot, he is so in tune with me in terms of visuals. Like, he just kind of can guess what I'm thinking most of the time without even really having to be told. Him and I are just, like, on the same wavelength, I guess. I can just say, the panel where this happens. Like, I don't describe where the framing should be, and he'll usually end up putting the perspective of, like, the camera, I guess, in a sense, right where I had it envisioned. Or he'll like just draw background details like how I imagined it without being told. We're like I can write really loose comic scripts with him just because he usually just knows what I want. It's really great to work with him. It's one of those like those kind of match made in heaven writer and artist sort of team ups because we're both on just like the same page for pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I've worked with a couple artists now in terms of just drawing comic scripts. I think like 3 or 4 done like some kind of little short comic based on one of my scripts. But he's always the one that most in terms of like capturing what I want. Well, as inversely, Matt, my other artist, because both of them are working on my main comic, which is like an original story. He always ends up just surprising me because he does stuff that I don't put in the script, but not in a way that's like I do my own thing. It's more like he just really loves attention to detail. He puts so much thought into like background Easter eggs. He puts so much thought into the character blocking and the way they're all standing in the scene. And like he puts a lot of thought into. Hope you can't hear my cat in the background.
I didn't want to say anything.
I thought that was happening outside my room.
I definitely heard that.
I was like, what is that coming from? It's fine though.
Yeah, no, it's no big deal.
It's no problem.
Yeah.
I was like so intently talking for a little while that I couldn't even really hear him because I also have headphones on.
I phased them out.
I was really curious where that was coming from.
Yeah, sorry. But anyway, Matt puts a lot of thought into like the sort of symbolism of visuals, so you could always kind of pick apart his pages and go, why did he position them this way? Or, why did he put the layout this way? And he always usually has an answer, and it's really cool to see him do like breakdowns of the pages and say why he laid it out this way. So, all of my artists that I'm working with currently, I'm really happy with. They're just so good at what they do, and I honestly think they're doing professional quality stuff, so I'm really hoping that they can maybe start doing it more, frequently as comic artists after we sort of put this book. So,
well, I mean,
wish me luck.
If the artist for Squirrel Girl can stay on Squirrel Girl.
Oh yeah.
Paul, do you have anything you want to say? Questions?
Okay, so one of my favorite videos of yours is where you put together that Black Suit Spider-Man. I want to know.
That is actually a really good video.
For like similar videos.
Well, something I've been editing last couple of days.
You're doing a Miles?
May or may not get uploaded today.
Oh,
Ooh.
Oh, that's exciting. Today being January 13th, this is not going to come out the same day.
I know I record podcasts like 2 weeks in advance sometimes. I don't want to spoil nothing, but
don't spoil it. I just want to know if you had any plans for it.
I've been trying to figure it out for the past week, so yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I'll just tell you, it's a character exactly like Spider-Man in every way.
Okay,
I
I
know.
know.
Well, I mean, you've definitely mentioned. You've definitely mentioned.
somebody else?
You've definitely mentioned.
Oh, but you forget
Clones are
Miles
thing.
is basically.
You know, I still.
Oh, no, man,
I think we got it pretty on point right there.
It's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that a lot of people make that connection because I stand by that. Miles. I'm not saying he's a great character by any means, but he's not. I wouldn't say he's a carbon copy of Peter personality wise.
I don't know. I feel like whenever he does deviate, it's very small, subtle ones.
Well,
but
even at his core, it's not. It doesn't really reflect Peter, like the way, like his how, like where he goes to school, his supporting cast and all that, how he acts. It's not. I really.
think more in terms of him being a superhero is what's always bothered me.
Yeah.
Because he's more of a quiet, more kind of reserved person in his personal life. He puts on the mask. He makes jokes as he's fighting villains at them, and he it's just him as Spider-Man is kind of the same as Peter as Spider-Man.
Right.
Like, they don't superhero in different ways, and it's very bothersome. I think when it comes to like the way they like interact with their supporting casts, that's different enough. At least like Miles has his parents, which interactions with than Peter with Aunt May or something, and of course Miles kind of has a best friend character right from the start with Genki.
You mean Ned?
But but Peter takes like years to find Harry Osborn. Like, a lot of people think Harry Osborn was like his friend from high school.
That's only been in
because
like
of,
recent media, right?
That's a really recent idea, actually. That kind of
Yeah, the
started
Raimi
with-
films established that, so everybody thinks that.
it
We're
actually
not doing that
started with
anymore.
shortly before Raimi, and then Raimi kind of took that idea and then rolled with it. The Raimi movies have a lot of Ultimate Spider-Man influence.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. People will tell you that every time they start with a new Spider-Man reboot, they'll go, well, this time, instead of looking at the classic comics, we're going to try and make it a little bit more like Ultimate Comics. But they've all done that. Like, all of them are based on the Ultimate Comics, so it's just kind of
Like The Amazing Spider-Man reeks.
someone wants to read the old one.
Reeks.
Like they're like like if you touch a book written by Stan Lee, you'll shrivel up and turn into a zombie and die.
Well,
Like,
then Eric should be
Read
dead.
the old ones; they're better.
Oh no, they're great. Yeah.
70s and 80s Spider-Man is the best. But anyway, Harry Osborn became Peter's friend in college, which was like a long time after the main stuff.
Well, I mean, he graduated pretty early into the book. Not a lot of it was in high school.
Yeah, that's another thing. Is a lot of people kind of overhype exactly how much Spider-Man is in high school, but really, I think he graduates like 40 issues in or something.
Like really soon.
And 800 after that. So, there's a lot of misconceptions and kind of based on Ultimate Spider-Man's influence on things, and that's kind of not the main point I was making. We were comparing Miles. I'm sorry. I kind of rambled.
No, I guess
So good.
since we're back on the topics of comics again, were you always Marvel, or was there ever a point where you were? I assume you're a bigger Marvel fan, but was there ever a point where DC was more on your mind than?
Because both of my parents were so into Marvel stuff, that's kind of what I ended up being destined for. I mean, I'm not like one of those like crazy cultists who says that it's us versus them.
Right.
My guy wearing red and blue tights is cooler than your guy wearing red and blue tights. Like, that's silly to me. That sort of fighting over it. I think there's a lot of really great DC books. In fact, I've been going back and reading the old Jack Kirby Mr. Miracle books from the 70s. But I think I gravitate towards Marvel a lot more. I mean, my mom read a lot of X-Men in high school and named me after her favorite character from that book.
Oh, I thought that was a pure
Oh,
coincidence.
wow,
I
that's
thought
awesome.
I thought that was coincidental.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Nope. She read a lot of X-Men, and they were coming up with a name. Here's a fun fact for you. I've probably explained this once or twice before, but mom and my dad were trying to come up with a name for me, my mom was like, "Well, what do we name him?" And my dad said, "We could call him Godzilla," and she shot that down immediately. That's been GodzillaMendoza.
Your parents are like badasses.
And then she was like, "Well, let's name him after an X-Men character." So it's Professor Xavier is pretty cool. So when my sister, her name is Phoenix, after Jean Grey.
Oh man,
We thought for a while, like, okay, if it's a boy, we'll name him Logan. If it's a girl, we'll name him Phoenix. Maybe Emma after like Emma Frost, but Jean Grey's cooler.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
About it. If I have kids one day, I'm thinking about what X-Men character would I name them that isn't like something like Tim or John. Like, what's a really cool sounding name?
Scott.
Well, Scott's pretty.
That is kind of
Kind
cool.
of common.
yo, that's gonna be a family legacy thing going on with him.
Yeah, that's kind of the hope. But
Oh, that's fucking badass.
That is badass.
maybe I could name my son Cable.
That'd be.
Oh,
Oh, wait,
dang.
you know what? Well, Nathaniel's a pretty good name. Nate.
Be something that you'd know is based on a comic book right away.
Oh yeah, true.
Okay, all right, I got it. His name is Cypher.
Oh dang.
Oh,
He can read any language. He's so useful.
his name is X-Man.
X-Man.
So I don't know if you guys have ever read this comic line, but DC versus Marvel, just as that whole crossover thing that they did back in the 90s. I really like that, and I bring it up to people often because they're like, well, DC would never mix with Marvel. I'm like, it can if it's done right. I mean, just look at how the Justice League and Avengers got well together. So if you haven't read it, read it. I find it one of my favorite comic lines just because it's the best of both worlds. And even puts them now, it intertwines them.
Didn't it do that spin-off into Amalgam Comics
It
too?
did.
Where
That's
it was like,
what happened. It was the whole.
that's cool.
Well,
I haven't read that stuff.
I
but
think
I want to.
Amalgam might have gotten absurdly edgy because what happened was they had or at least one of them got absurdly edgy because there was a Batman and Wolverine. Darkclaw, Batman Wolverine fusion, and that just screams edgy. And I
Almost literally, because
And
have
I
you seen
don't-
his costume?
oh, it's so edgy. It's the edgiest. It's literally covered in edges. Yeah.
You get tetanus.
Oh yeah. I guess. What are you? You're a big film guy, obviously. What are you looking forward to this year? Whether it be the Cape stuff or just film, anything.
I always try to keep an open mind. I'm really willing to see like any movie that I hear is good. I mean, of course, money is a little bit tight right now, so it's been hard to get out to the theater as often as I'd like to. But I don't know. I think this year I'm gonna try and see as many movies as I can that aren't superhero films because I kind of realized over the last few years like that's all I see anymore. And that's kind of a disservice to the industry, especially now since I'm going to film school. Like I'm getting a degree in writing and directing, and I think if you're not doing a superhero movie, no one's really watching, and that's kind of sad. So I want to start looking at movies that out of my comfort zone, my realm, because comic book stuff I know like the back of my hand, but like outside of that, I mean, I've kind of fallen out of sync with. So, I'm looking forward to. Like, I'm really interested in that new J.J. Abrams produced God Particle thing, which is supposed to be like,
Yeah, it's like an anthology. His Cloverfield anthology thing.
Yeah. But because the thing that interests me most about that is the weird way it's being marketed, because we got almost about 4 weeks away from the opening and still no trailer back. I keep thinking they're gonna just do a trailer the day before it drops, because that's with like 10 Cloverfield Lane. They put the trailer out for that like 3 weeks before it was out, was in production. No one knew that like it existed until the trailer happened. Like it was filmed entirely in secret. It was just, and that's like unheard of, and it still made such good returns by the like kind of, oh, what's this? Like this movie is coming out like really, really soon, and no one's ever heard of it. Like there's kind of a mystery behind it. So I like that. I like that because with a lot of movies, you know every single thing going on behind the scenes the entire time before it comes out.
Yeah.
A billion set photos. There's people taking, pictures with their phones and putting it on Instagram and Twitter all the time. Like, that's the general outline of a plot for any random movie now, just by looking at the set photos that are online or seeing like the amount of kind of hint dropping in interviews and all the marketing, or the trailer just shows you everything. To have a movie that you just don't know anything about drop is kind of unheard of in this day and age. So that's got me really excited.
Well, think about Blade Runner 2049. Most of that was filmed on a closed set, and I went into that movie mostly blind because the first trailer that came out was like, okay, I kind of don't understand what's going on. I know it's Blade Runner, but that's about it. I came out of that movie, and it's now one of my most favorite like visual movies of all time, just because it really did capture that same style and feel from the original Blade Runner.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, man. I think Blade Runner 2049 is one of probably my favorite movies from 2017, up there with like Logan and I'm sure a couple others I'm going to forget the title of.
Have you seen Baby Driver?
Not yet, actually. I've been meaning to.
Dang.
It's great. It's so good. It's actually tied with Blade Runner for being one of my favorite films of the last year.
Very different movies.
Oh well, I mean,
sounds like it is your favorite film, Kyle.
It is. Like in general, 2017 was a good year for me, I guess, because Blade Runner is great, and Baby Driver.
I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I've nothing but good things, especially in when you go to film school, everyone is just kind of always gabbing all day in first period about what new movies have come out. I think a lot of the students there have a lot more money to get to the theater than I do, because they talk pretty much every day about a new movie they saw at the theater kind of nearby the campus. And I can always get like a really good gauge on what's good and what's bad just from kind of like, looking at my phone and listening in on those conversations. I kind of eavesdrop for like, hey, I wonder if this movie sucks. Let me listen to what that guy over there, Tim, is saying. I've been looking forward to Baby Driver. Even some of my teachers have been talking about it. Like, they're all really big fans of the director.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright, my boy. Sorry.
We've seen, especially in my post-production class, where we're working on editing stuff, we watch so many clips from Edgar Wright movies. We've seen, I think, so many clips from Hot Fuzz and This Is the End that cumulatively we've seen about the length of one whole movie between them. Because we're always just like analyzing like every little thing, like the way he cuts from one scene to the next with a sound effect that kind of sort of closes off the last scene and starts the new one, or the really rhythmic way the dialogue is edited. It's a lot of really fun stuff from a technical standpoint. So that's kind of what I always go into them looking for.
Nice. So because you were talking about horror and obviously the X-Men connection, what do you think about the New Mutants movie that's going to be coming out?
It actually got delayed 10 months.
Delayed to next year?
Yeah.
Really?
10 months.
2019?
Yeah, I got pushed back.
10 months, you guys.
Wow, damn.
And it's interesting.
Fine.
It's interesting because it tested well apparently with audience, but not as well as they wanted. So like the rumor is they want to amp up the horror elements.
I like that they're exploring
Reshoots or some kind of like really clever editing stuff, I guess.
I like how they're exploring with different genres with superhero movies, because like we get something new each time with Fox's X-Men movies.
Yeah, that's
And
what's
I really
cool
like that.
about Fox Marvel. Like a couple of years ago, I was really not happy with the way that whole thing was going, but ever since Days of Future Past ended, I've been kind of a lot more excited for every Fox Marvel movie because they're always trying something so weird and different. Deadpool is like really far off in tone from any X-Men movie, but then Logan is kind of really it's almost like an Oscar movie. It's really artfully made and really
without even like the character names of Logan and Xavier, you probably wouldn't even recognize that as an X-Men movie to begin with.
It's just so far off from what we've seen. And then I guess what's people are really put off to New Mutants for having this kind of horror element, but I feel like that's something that was intended by the comic because there's a arc that they're directly going based off of where they're kind of fighting some kind of like a mutant that can warp reality and is attacking them as if he were some kind of ghost or poltergeist. You don't really know that he's just another person with powers until like later in the story. So I think it was like the Ghost Bear story or something. It had like a weird title.
Yeah, that's the
He's
main
a
villain.
bear.
Yeah, main villain, I believe.
And everyone's immediately kind of trashing the movie because it doesn't look like an Avengers movie. But I think, one, they're trying for comic accuracy, which a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on. So, you can always tell who's not actually reading them when they go, this isn't like the comics at all.
Well, the thing about especially in this group, the four of us, we saw the trailer. It looks like a generic horror film, something we've seen that's come out in the previous few years, like something like Blumhouse would have put out.
Yeah. Have superpowers, so it's. I mean, I guess maybe it's just because I've also have been kind of interested in this attempt at like a fusion of superhero films with horror films that has been going on for a while. I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but they really tried for it with that Fantastic Four movie from 2015.
Right, yeah. The body horror stuff, right? Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool, but then like the story was just kind of going nowhere, and it was really slow. And then like in the last 10 minutes, it decided to shift tones and start trying to be an Avengers movie. So everyone's like shouting about teamwork and working together and making like wisecracks at each other. And I was like, where was all of this 20 minutes ago? Who are you people? These aren't the characters I was just spending 2 hours with.
And another issue I have with Fan Four Stick is just as a filming standpoint, you can tell the differences between the reshoots and the original footage instantly. So the one time I tried to watch it, I was like, oh god, this is so unbearable. I can see every difference. Even the acting tones are completely different compared scene to scene, and it's just terrible. I am amazed I was able to make it through that movie.
I love how obvious the reshoots are, because you could always tell
Kate Mara changes hair from scene to scene.
Hair is so different. It's not quite as bad as Superman's face.
I'm gonna be 100% transparent. I couldn't tell that it was different, other than the first scene with him, like the cell phone
There's
footage.
the opening shot.
Yeah.
That's probably the most egregious one in there. Then later it gets a little bit. There's a couple of spots where I noticed it, and my friend and I were kind of like trying. We were snickering when we were watching it, just trying to like hide how funny it looked. Him in profile view, where his lip looks so indented and weird, and it's just so.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at that one now.
That movie had such it had a big budget. I don't know what they were doing.
Well, apparently it wasn't really DC's fault. It was I think
Brothers.
Paramount.
Right. No, well, it's definitely more
Paramount for the
it's definitely
mustache thing,
Paramount
Yeah.
because the deal was Henry Cavill had a mustache on for Mission Impossible 6, and he was contractually obliged not to shave it off. And
they were like, okay. Warner Brothers came to them, whoever owns Mission Impossible, and they're like, all right, we want him to shave the mustache so we can do these reshoots, but we'll foot the bill and pay for the CGI to re-add the mustache for your things so he can be on both sets. Took footage from Man of Steel and did like tests for it, and digitally added a mustache for it. There was even like a guy behind the scenes, like one of the lead effects animators, going, "Yeah, adding a mustache to someone is super easy. You just kind of, you just kind of track it to their facial movement, a little bit of hair physics. You just kind of like, be careful about the lighting. Way easier." This is the quote he said: "It is way easier than digitally reconstructing the entire lower half of a man's face for several scenes." But the other production company, Paramount, but I feel like that's the wrong one. They were like, "No, we're not going for it. You have to have him wearing the mustache in your thing. He's not going to shave it." Warner Brothers was kind of like at a loss. They're like, "Well, shit, we can't, it's how are we going to do this?" And they tried to figure it out, and it's just like it wasn't really going to go.
It's just a real big fuck you from Paramount.
It just happens, that's one of those things. Is like I don't blame that on like, oh, DC movie incompetence. I think that's more of just one of those unfortunate things, because you got to remember there's like people behind these movies, and like they have interactions, and it's not always going to go exactly how you hope it is, no matter how much money they're throwing at the project. If they can't get someone else to play ball, they're just kind of like, we'll figure it out.
Well, I think one thing's for sure, that definitely doesn't help their situation, especially now, because Justice League didn't do as well as they wanted it to. So they're having to tiptoe a bit more with how they're putting these movies out.
I think
Justice League was sad. I wish it had gone better.
They actually, I think they announced a release date for Shazam recently.
Oh yeah.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
No, what? I don't think, is he gonna be in this one? Because they said he was gonna be Black Adam as a villain, but now they're gonna do a Black Adam movie or something.
That's something I despise. That's really stupid, and Black Adam is not a character that deserves his own movie. That's like going entirely based off of the star power of The Rock. Like,
right, yeah.
That's exactly
it's
what
not
it is.
so much about like a narrative reason or a writing thing. Like, there's no like creative decision behind it. It's just, if we put out a superhero movie in character, we can make money. And that's kind of what they're hoping for right now. So it comes off to me as kind of a sleazy decision, because it makes no sense. It's like, cast Tom Cruise as Green Goblin and then give him a Green Goblin movie. Like, who wants to see that?
And you'd be surprised with Sony's thinking.
Yeah, well, yeah. So that's one of those decisions I'm really not on board for. Like, I think they could be. I don't know. I think the whole DC cinematic universe is like really up for grabs right now. Like, they're just trying to announce whatever project they can and see which ones get a little bit of hype going, and then those will be the ones that they produce. It would not.
Well, it's like Suicide Squad that had so much hype behind it, and then look how that turned out.
Yeah.
I wanted that to be close to.
So I think they're just going whatever gets the most buzz on social media at this point, because they have no idea how to please the audience. Because like even hardcore DC fans aren't happy, movie fans aren't happy, Marvel fans aren't. It's like every time it comes out, it's a completely new thing that is not what anyone asked for.
I'm just waiting for DC to buy Disney to buy DC.
Oh, I heard that wrong at first. I'm waiting for DC to buy Marvel.
Messed that up.
I was like, whoa.
All right,
I'm just waiting for Disney to buy DC.
all right. I guess we should be wrapping up soon. Which is so our final question. It's probably the biggest question since. Do you have any advice or tips for aspiring content creators, whether it be writing, comic book stuff, or YouTube? Because Mike and I are trying to write our own stuff right now, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say don't worry about building an audience. Like, don't actively go, what's going to get the most views? Just the highest quality thing you can. it really well. Be very passionate about it. If you're not passionate about it, it's going to show in the video. People can tell if you're bored. Do something that makes you happy.
Not bad advice.
And just keep that consistently. Like, people like consistent. If you upload once a year, you're not going to really get anywhere. But if you can put out a video that you're really happy with every 2 or 3 months, you'll kind of, if for people working on YouTube videos, because 2 years ago I had maybe 50 subscribers. Now I'm at 37,000. Never really thought to myself, like, what can I do that'll get views? I just said, I feel like making a video about Spider-Man today. I've never done that before. I'll do a video about Spider-Man. Like, I was really depressed at the time because I found out my girlfriend cheated on me. So I was like trying to find something to do to just kill time and like take my mind off of it. Comic book videos, since I like had this sort of, because before now, my whole love for comic books was kind of like a secret thing. Like, I didn't really talk about it at school. I mean, people saw that I was wearing Spider-Man shirts a lot, but I just kind of kept it to myself.
Yeah, I wear a lot of
Seeing the
Spider-Man
reaction
shirts. Cool.
and like the way things have gone in the past 2 years, I wear it like a badge of honor. I tell everyone about this stuff now.
Yeah.
Like, I used to be kind of ashamed of it, but now I realize, like, yeah, I can be totally passionate about this stuff, and there are people who are interested in it. So I think a lot of gotten in the past 2 years has helped me through a lot of bad stuff is happening, and it's meant a lot to me just to have so many people share my passion and share my love of this stuff, and they care what I have to say, because before all this I was just kind of like no one, and like my personal life, I feel like I walk with a little bit more confidence. I talk a little bit more openly, and I have all of you guys to thank for that. So,
hey man, you gonna make me cry, man.
Oh, I guess on the writing end, what would you have to say on that? The
and
creative stuff.
in terms of being a writer, do things that are new. Don't ever try and copy someone else. Don't ever try to be derivative. Just, no matter how hard it is, coming up with an original idea is always possible. There's always something that no one else has thought of, and you're going to be the first person to come up with it. Say that all the good ideas have been done already, because that's kind of impossible and not true, and people have been saying that for 60 years, and it's being said even after everything cool that's happened in those last 60 years. So just try and think outside the box and break barriers. And again, write what you're passionate about. A lot of people say write what you know, but maybe if it's something that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, but you still find interesting, go for that. I'd like to write a story about Vietnam someday. I've never been into war movies or war stuff, but I've always actually been kind of interested in that war every time I read about it in like Punisher Max or I watch movies like Jacob's Ladder or Apocalypse Now. So I think, if I were to do some kind of new venture in terms of writing, I would go for something like that, because it's something fun to research and learn more about. And just don't worry too much about what other people are going to think. I think write for yourself. Like that even applies to the videos. One day I sat down and said, I'm going to make a video that I'd like to watch. So what topics am I interested in? So, write stories for yourself. What kind of book would you like to read? And then just make it exist. Like your perfect dream novel, you can write it. Or your dream comic book, you can write it. So just make things for yourself. And if you're passionate enough about it and you love it enough, people will see that when they see it. Like it translates. You can see passion on a page. And if they have similar interests, or even if you just do it well enough, people will take notice and they'll start paying attention, and you can really, build up your audience that way. But for the money or the attention or the fame, it's just kind of, never really get anywhere for that. You know, it's always got to be about for yourself, not for anyone else.
And I think that's a
was
great
hella
note.
inspiring.
Yeah, it's a great note to end it on. Anthony, Mike, and Paul, do you have anything else to say before we start
I
the end stuff?
don't think so.
All right.
No, that was actually really good.
Yeah.
All right. So, Xavier, do you want to plug anything before we do the goodbyes and stuff?
Just guess subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter. I have a Patreon. I don't know, just
We will.
Do all
that stuff down
all
below.
stuff
Yeah,
is-
we'll link
if,
it down below.
If you want good content, go to that guy.
Yeah, go to this
he
guy.
He does the good.
All right.
I try my best.
Yeah. And I want to have a special thanks to our new editor, Oro, for doing some of the past few episodes. Xavier, it was great to have you on. This is awesome. Hopefully we do.
Yeah, definitely.
I had a great time.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't ramble a little too much.
Oh no, it's no
Oh,
problem.
no, it's fine.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
love to hear you rambling.
So hopefully we do this again some other time. There are actually a few things we haven't quite gotten to, but that's fine. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. It was a good time. I'm really happy you guys had me on, and maybe we could do it again sometime. I'd really be.
Yeah.
I'd really like that.
Awesome. It's glad to hear.
Cool,
Glad to hear
cool.
that. So I guess we'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye. Bye, guys.
See ya.
See ya.
All right.
Obligatory bomb squad joke.
Oh yeah, there we go. We gotta keep
forgot. Shit.
we gotta keep that in. All right. Thanks everyone for listening.